pudding snacks.
What it do, snackers, snackettes, and snack X's? It's your boy Gage. I am here with jokes, and it's time for another episode of Spoiler Boys.
Spoiler boys.
And the boys are here to spoil episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha all along. This is it, the final two episodes. The season is over. The series is over.
I
Yeah.
know I'm not sure which way to necessarily go. They're very good about wording how they want it to be because I'm pretty sure on Disney Plus it does say season and it doesn't say series finale. So
Yeah, but I feel like they'll change that. As a matter of fact, as of right now, there's a rumor that there is a Wiccan series in the works.
okay.
Um, and it would look like this show is going to maybe move forward in Vision Quest. I kind of don't want that to be the case though, but we can talk about that a little later.
Cool.
I'm not gonna try to. Um, it's an interesting thing they did, I think, with the way that they did episodes 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little strange because they really could have, I think, had episode 9 be episode 8
Mm-hmm.
because it was mostly flashback,
Flashback.
and then done episode 8 at the end, and then just kind of had the last bit of episode 9 happen after that. Like, I do feel like the way that it happened, I feel like we should just talk about them as one thing because
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like one kind of stands without the other.
Yeah, no, not at all.
My honest opinion is I'm not sure exactly where I land on the season as a whole because I'm not exactly sure where I land on episode 9 as a finale. So episode 8 is basically exactly what we thought. It picks up at the end of 7 and gives us this final trial, which makes sense, right? And then episode 9 is kind of after the fact, but we got to kind of put a bow on some of the things that are
Mm-hmm.
Still kind of left out and a little confusing. It is in fact a little bit that like episode 9 might have been cheating for me a little bit because it feels like it's the like, oh, who was the person that was in witness protection? Let's give you a whole thing dedicated to explaining that thing. Because of the way they did it, I almost feel like they could have called this a single episode and just made it a longer,
Like a movie. It's like for all like the two episodes together. I feel like how they were split and where it's like literally they could have just been splashed together. But I guess for the sake of them not wanting to make it an hour and a half long movie, they just split it into the two episodes. But like you said, with the flashback in the middle of it, like personally, I think with the way episode 8 ends, and how we really I'm gonna be honest with you, Agatha dying. Like I thought there was gonna be like this swerve, and then somehow she comes back. It was like I didn't know if it was gonna. I didn't know about the whole. I didn't think about the ghost thing. I'm like, okay, that's an easy keep them into the actual show for. But I thought maybe she was actually going to come back to life, or somehow it was going to play out and found out that she faked it or whatever for it. But to me, her dying and then going back and doing the flashback to kind of see how things actually unfolded, like I think that was like in the 1700s. I thought it was okay that the way that they did it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and that's maybe a little disheartening, like a
Mhm.
little less satisfying. It doesn't make it like it was still really good
Yeah.
because it gave us answers, to things. And I think there was something special about the placement of it. So I'm in a space, and maybe I'll feel differently when I talk about it. Right now, I still feel like it was really good, but I wasn't like amped up.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like when it was done, and I wasn't quite. I don't know, something about it. I feel like I wasn't quite satisfied, but episode 8 gives us the final trial. Um, that concept of them being on the road and kind of circling back to the beginning of the
Yeah.
road where they get back to the shoes. And having Agatha be very angry at Billy at that point and being like, "Yo," and like we don't know in that moment, like we don't know that this is Billy's doing, so
Mhm.
to speak. Again, it is one of the things that's brilliant about the way that the show is written and shown, that like you can go back and really think about it, and you can literally see the surprise on Agatha's face when the road does in fact turn up. And we're all blindsided at the beginning of the show, the first time they go to summon the road and it doesn't work, and then it works,
Mhm.
right? And it was weird because we even talked amongst ourselves saying like, all right, but like Mrs. Hart isn't even really a witch.
Mhm.
How did it work? Shouldn't even really count as being part of the coven or whatever. And it's just like, oh, because everybody's just basically there playing a role.
Yep.
Um, so getting to that last trial and having it basically be that they're back in the morgue, which is kind of how the show starts.
Mhm.
Not completely, but um, once that trial begins, and oddly enough, starts like, I don't know how they go from putting the shoes on to ending up in the morgue, but that's how it works, right? I'm just gonna put the shoes on, and Billy kind of does it to himself when he's like, we took our shoes off out of respect for the road,
Mhm.
screw the road, right? And it's just like, put my shoes back on. I'm done with this. And then they end up back kind of at the house. They end up in an analog of her basement, which
Mhm.
basically is telling you they never really left her
Left
basement
of
to
it.
begin
Right.
with, right? Um, which again, we're gonna get into this, but really does speak to the kind of power that Billy has, because unless he created the Salem 7 like in his head, they really also got trapped in there
Murked.
and and killed in it.
Oh god. Like I hope it wasn't, a random 7 people that unfortunately just got caught up in the mix to become the Salem 7. Cause
I mean, I'll be honest, that's the one thing about the show that is kind of like feels like witness protection to me. It is
mm,
the Salem 7. Like we never really get an explanation of who they are,
right.
why they're important, what the big deal is, why they're chasing Agatha. There are explanations for who they are and what they are in the comics. Um, but the idea that they show up and that they're supposed to be this threat and they're kind of scary, and then there really is no battle, with
Mm-hmm.
them. There is no technical defeating of them. It's a one and done, and it just kind of wipes them out. I was kind of expecting that somewhere along the lines in these two episodes, they were going to show back up in
Mm-hmm.
some way, right? They were going to be a threat. We were going to see the animals or something, even if we didn't see them in that same form, kind of show back up. And it could have been the same way, like we haven't seen Rio, but we kind of were trying to figure out what she was up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a good moment of discovery once they get into the trial and come to realize that Jen was never really bound, at least not by the someone who didn't have magic, but that it turns out that she was bound by Agatha.
Was Agatha all along? I just, I just, I
Exactly.
just, I just laugh now at the title and see,
Mhm.
like, and seeing how, like, but it still want, I still want to go back and kind of go through each one of the titles because I feel like each one of the titles kind of still tied in somewhere, um, into it. Like, I don't know if that was. There's a part of me almost feel like it was intentional that they did the whole changing of the title so many times, and then land on Agatha all along, and then it kind of plays it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely something to that. And I guess, again, the show has seeds sown throughout the entire like season of things that kind of tell you like what's actually happening. It's like
Hmm.
kind of right in front of you the whole time. Um, and the titles of the individual episodes all being lyrics from the Witch's Road
Hmm.
song. Um, and it turning out that it was Agatha and her son that wrote that song in the very beginning. Um, is it's she even got into an argument with Jen about that song, about
Hmm.
the lyrics of the song, and saying it the right way. And when Agatha corrects her, she corrects her with so much like, yo, like I know it's the coven too, not. And then when you watch the final episode, you're like, oh, because there
Oh
were
yeah.
only two of them. Like she really knew. It's like, I don't know, there's stuff like that sewn throughout, but for all the titles and everything that happens to make sense based on the title of the episodes, for all of them to be from the song, and then for it to have turned out that, well, Agatha and Nicholas wrote the song, it has been Agatha all along,
Hmm.
right? Um, but the truth is, at at least in some way, it's been Billy all along.
Yeah.
At least from the point they get on the road, right? Um, that revelation that it was Agatha that it was the one who bound Jen and left her like that for a century.
I,
Um, again, it was her all along, and she's been there the whole time. But again, like she didn't know. She didn't know
she
that
didn't know it was actually
she was
Jen
the
that.
one who did it. So watching Jen perform the unbinding spell using Agatha and getting her pink back, her pink powers, and then just vanishing.
Vanishing.
I'm gonna keep it a buck, bro. I didn't think she was gonna make it. Like I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like I'm because everybody else died.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, well then your trial was the first trial, and she survived her own trial. Um, and when Agatha said, well, she got her power back, so she's out. It's over for her, right? Of course, you don't see her until much later in terms of like
Yeah.
what happened to her when she disappeared. But so now it's a matter of figuring it out for the two of them. And um, we get these really good moments of the angry and I think tired slash defeated version of Agatha. Um, like juxtaposed against the motherly version and more human version of Agatha throughout the show, but it's in these moments between her and Billy where she finally sits down with him and says, "Look, just concentrate." Walks him through how to actually meditate. Um, and you essentially see him doing the same thing that was like one of the last things we saw his mother do, right? Like when she was studying
Mm-hmm.
the dark hold and like a meditation kind of, you know, crisscross applesauce, sitting down and just kind of freeing his mind kind of thing. And then you start to hear moments that come from WandaVision of them talking and he's trying to figure out what happened to Tommy and all that kind of stuff. And again, I was still in a place where I'm like, all right, I still don't really know what happened with Tommy, but it does seem that Billy did, in fact, use his power to try to help save Tommy and find Tommy a body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like the idea of him being like, did I kill this
Kill
boy?
this boy trying to save Tommy at the same time. It's like
Yeah,
it seems like maybe that was at the moment when they were meditating, it was just like it zeroed in on, the unfortunate end for another life. And
yeah.
that this was the perfect opportunity to get Tommy. But like because there's no clear way to say that, oh, the magic like that he was doing was forcing the kid to of course get in the water, not being able to swim. Like I feel like it was just one of those unfortunate perfect timings that
Hmm.
happened that was able to be ended up being able to put Tommy into the other child's body. Now, I'm eager to see obviously how we end up playing towards that in a future show, movie, whatever it may be, or if it could be like one of those things that happened somewhere that obviously it could have been involved in another movie, another show or something, but there really wasn't the focus on it. Somebody eventually is going to tell a story that gets us to that point, maybe. But
I mean, it's interesting because in the comics, Tommy has an upbringing that is different from Billy's, and that Billy like has parents and has a different name, just like he
mm-hmm,
does in this show. Um, where Tommy kind of grew up in a broken home and didn't have the things that Billy had, and so when they find each other in the comics, you kind of do get this difference in life that they've had to live since, like I guess since what in this show would be since the bodies got transferred or whatever. But it is still an interesting thing of like, well, then where is he? And is it totally possible that he was just like in Eastview with Billy the whole time and
mm-hmm,
he didn't know? It's also an interesting thought of like, okay, so their powers are very different, right? Billy is a witch, and that's what his power set is. But Tommy's power set is more like a mutant,
mm-hmm,
right? He's got this super speed, and with the mutants coming into the MCU and Deadpool kind of, closing that gap, then what I'm thinking is that he probably ended up in another universe. And that universe is a Fox universe, maybe, that introduces mutants into the MCU, but also we still have what happened with Kamala Khan
mm-hmm,
and her technically now being said that she's a mutant, so we do know that mutants exist in the MCU. Um, and so it also could be a thing that depending on the age of Tommy, whether he's the same age as him or the body was the right age or whatever, that when he gets there, his powers didn't manifest right away. I mean, Billy seemed to always have the ability to hear thoughts, right? And use telepathy. But like, is Tommy gonna have super speed and have had
just right
super
off the break.
speed the whole time? Kind of thing. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see how they go about doing that. But of course, ending the show on a note where Agatha's like, "Let's go find Tommy," is like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, all right. Well, then what are we doing? Where are we going to find this? And I'll tell you that probably my most disappointing thing about stuff like that now with the MCU is like, how long are we going to have to wait
Wait.
to get that, right? To find that, to figure that out. That's
That yeah, no, I definitely agree because like right now, like they pretty much gave us their slate, and obviously things can change in there for it. And
they
unless
did.
right, unless this is going to like you said unfold within, I want Vision's story to really truly be about Vision finding himself or whatever it may be. Like obviously the two of them, Tommy, um, and Billy floating in there. I expect it to happen in some shape or form, whether it's a minor instance or if they end up trying to intertwine it into the main story. Um, but the wait is just because with the shows, like let's say we do get another season, like at the earliest, it's going to be what like 2 to 3 years potentially before we see a season two, or like you said, if they are working on a Wiccan show, that's clearly in its early infancy stages. So just that wait, I feel like that sometimes goes against it a little bit when you have these gaps in between, whether it's the movie or the shows that kind of relate to each other. And
Mhm.
for some people that, let's say, for whatever reason, you didn't watch WandaVision, obviously there was catalysts in here that were directly, for obvious reasons, related to WandaVision. And then it's kind of going to be the same when if that comes out, if you haven't watched WandaVision, Agatha all along, and potentially the Vision series, you could be even far removed from it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, WandaVision was a long time ago.
Uh huh.
It was a long time ago. Um, and so for us to like really kind of just be getting the next piece of that story, so to speak, um, it's a little strange. I mean, 3 years or so removed. Again, they even tell you from a story perspective that Agatha's been stuck in this
For
thing
three
she was
years.
in for 3 years before this happens, and all of what happened in this show happened in the course of a single day, right? So when they get out, when Billy gets out and goes home, he shows up at his parents' house
And they
and they like,
say
you've been missing for 24
24
hours.
hours.
Oh, all right. You know what I mean? Like it's been a day. Like it hasn't been and it kind of makes sense. Like when you go back and you look at the story and how it happened. Um, yeah, I mean, look, for Billy to get out, figure out what happened with Tommy, to me, it would seem that in order for him to get out of his own trial of the road that he created,
Mm-hmm.
he would have had to have found Tommy. Like that was the thing that he was searching for. But then did he find Tommy? Like he figured out, I guess, that he put Tommy in a body. He knows at least, I guess, because
He's
he's
out
been
there.
saying throughout the show, like he could feel him, but he couldn't find him. Like he couldn't figure out
Mm-hmm.
where he was. So he knew he was out there, but he didn't know where. And he needed to be able to retrace his steps from that moment of the end of WandaVision for him to figure out, I did get him in a body. I do have some clues as to what it is. Now I actually have to go physically
Mm-hmm.
find him. So the best I guess he could do in the road was to mentally figure out what he did with Tommy in that time frame, and that was enough to get him out.
Out.
Um, and then Agatha, time is running out. She's in her own basement, and um, she opens the locket, right? Mother Maiden Crone locket has the hair from her son. There's the cracks in the dirt, ashes to ashes, right? Dust to dust. Takes the hair, uses her own tear, plants it, up sprouts a dandelion, life and death, and goes back and she manages to get out, right? And when she comes out, boy,
Oof.
it's the Wizard of Oz, bro. It's the Wicked Witch of the West. And this is kind of what I was waiting for her to kind of have a showdown with Rio,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for us to get some kind of explanation of the relationship here, which we still don't really get.
We
We
didn't
just
get too
know that they
much.
were together.
Yeah, she referred to her as my love in the
Hmm.
flashback scene, but outside
Hmm.
of that,
Yeah, I mean, look, they were already a thing, right?
hmm
So, um, before we get into, I guess, the fight itself and kind of how that turned out, I guess my best estimation for the relationship between Death and Agatha probably, in my opinion, revolves around the idea that being Death, is a lonely job that you
hmm
will do forever, and that you'll never really have someone. And if you have someone, their time is going to be very limited. And as Death, you will still be responsible for moving them on to the afterlife and taking that away from them. And in Agatha, you have a person, again, you have these witches that, for whatever the reason is, are able to live for hundreds of years, right? Like, we don't really get an explanation for why it is that any of the rest of them, Lily has been around for centuries, and clearly, like, Jen's been around with no power for over a century, right? Like, we
hmm
don't really know why they have lived the lives they've lived. Where Alice was the child of a witch, but she didn't have centuries of age on her
right.
or anything like that, right? So there really isn't an explanation that's given as to why they're able to live as long as they live, but it would seem that maybe they just age differently, because Lily is clearly much older than the rest of them, but seems to not necessarily be older than Agatha, right? But Agatha appears to be remaining alive personally and maintaining her own youth by taking the lives of other witches, taking their power, and that is elongating her life.
Life.
And she and Rio, I imagine, have a working relationship, right? That comes from the fact that Agatha, even after Nicholas is gone, and clearly they were a thing before that.
hmm
So, maybe from the very first time that Agatha killed her own coven, when her mother tried to kill
Kill
her,
her. Yeah,
and she ends up killing her own coven, and at that point, Death
that
gets
shows
all of
up.
those bodies,
hmm
right? Um, that maybe there's an alliance formed there, or there's something in that, and over the years, that doesn't seem to be what it is, but there also seems to be, again, we have another weird thing, right? Where, very much like Wanda creating her own children, right? Which, again, comics and MCU, there's really no real explanation for. Nicholas Scratch is
Was made
the
from
Darth
scratch.
Vader of the MCU.
Was made from
Slim
scratch.
has no daddy, right? Just like just like what we just watched in the last Star Wars show, when it was like, oh no, these twins don't have no they don't have no daddy. There is no father. We as witches created life. There's a part of me that thinks that in some manner Rio may have been Nicholas's mother too. Nicholas kind of looks like Rio, bro. Like, I'm just I'm trying to keep it a buck with you, right? And at the time when Rio shows up to take Nicholas's life, before Nicholas is even born,
hmm
right? It's at that point that Agatha says, "No, my love, please, no." Right? So they clearly already have a relationship, are already together.
hmm
So it is possible that something that happened between them, some form of witchcraft or something, is what formed that life.
hmm
And Rio's like, yeah, nah, he's not gonna make it, right? And they make a deal. Like, the only thing I can offer you is time, and I'm only willing to do that because you're you and how I feel about you is death. So death makes a deal with Agatha because of how she feels about her. Maybe also because technically that would make Nicholas hers too. Joke, are you following this? Like, I
I
mean,
get what no, I get what you're saying, and it's like it's the Star Wars syndrome. Part of me was like,
the
okay,
midichlorians, bruh.
yeah, like either that or somehow, I know we they only slightly mention, Mephisto like one time. Like that's the only other catalyst that I could think of, maybe that allowed something like that to actually happen. Um, because she did specifically say like there was like it was like she like no incantations or something. It was something specifically Agatha said when she was about to give birth about for Nicholas, and I
Well,
don't know.
after she gave birth, after
Mm,
she gave birth, after
mm,
he was born, yeah, she said something about, yep, there was no incantations, no magic, no nothing or whatever. And I don't know if that was about keeping
just the
him
delivery
alive during the
itself, or
birthing.
right.
Yeah,
S-
yeah.
So that I'm not 100% sure about. I'm like it would be nice to eventually if one of these stories ever actually addressed that. I feel like somebody down the road is gonna whether it's another series or whatever, maybe it's fine. Who's the father, and maybe that's something that'll
But
inevitably get
again,
it.
there is not supposed to be a father. Just kind of like how Vision is not. And it's, again, it's weird because,
I mean, technically, Vision
you
has
know,
two dads, so Tony Stark
correct.
and and uh um oh man, I'm having a moment right now.
Bruce,
Bruce Banner, geez.
I mean, I guess you could count Thor in there with the lightning.
Hey,
Three dads, my three dads. Um, Vision is also interesting, and we have Vision Quest, which obviously this story could pick up there, but we also know that Mephisto. They've already said Mephisto is going to be in Ironheart.
hmm
So it's possible we pick up there and that there's something else there because I'm gonna keep it a buck with you, bro. The idea of Mephisto, the devil himself, showing up in what is basically an Iron Man show is like, bro, why? Why
yeah,
would
I
that
don't.
even be a thing?
I
That
don't.
says to me there's got to be somebody else in there with powers because
Has
Mephisto
to be.
can't
That just
have
that
nothing to do
unless
with
like I
Iron.
highly doubt that Riri Williams is going to make a deal with the devil to be able to assemble her her suit. Like
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean,
So yeah, there's definitely someone else mixed and match in there. And
100%. Um, Nonetheless, Agatha bursts out of her own basement, and Rio is on her roof,
hmm
like bringing the storm, and the town is like, "Hey, dog,
oh,
not
is this
again, dog.
happening again?
Dog, they
uh,
all should have free therapy from the FBI, provided by the U.S. government of Avengers, whatever." Like, um, you know, this bit of battle, this kind of an explanation of the fact that Billy is an anomaly that shouldn't exist,
hmm
that he is a life that needs to be given and he needs to do it himself because he is the person that cheated death in the first place. Technically, what you have, I imagine, is two bodies. Like, I don't know how that was supposed to work. Like, if Wanda, having created life from nothing, right, and giving birth via witchcraft, when they die, do those souls count as souls that technically death is supposed to collect? And if they're not, then it means that Billy, the soul that went, like the body of the person that Billy Maximoff jumped into in William, it is William's body that she needs to collect,
that makes sense.
right? Because if you go back to when they had their conversation in like episode 5 or whatever it was, Death says, I get my bodies, not I get my souls. I get my bodies. So, I don't think there would have been a body to collect of Billy and Tommy, but of William, there would have been.
Mm-hmm.
But then that also means
There's another body.
that if Billy moved Tommy's body into the dying body of someone else,
She need to collect his body.
there's another one that needs to be collected as well. Again, unless that body is in another universe on
Mm-hmm.
some multiverse type thing. Um, which again could be what that is. Um, Having Agatha be involved in it and then basically being like, all right, well, look, you have had the most special treatment of anybody ever, period, point blank. You should super be dead. I'll take you instead. Right? It's like death just has a number. This is how many I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have. And right now, I'm short. I don't care how I get it, but I gotta get it. Right? Um, but she can't take Billy's because of the circumstances. However, the rules of that work. So now we got to fight. And my man shows up in full Wiccan
Mm-hmm.
costume,
Clean.
floating through the sky. Who knows how, bro? I don't know how he ended up in the outfit, bro. Again, listen, this is one of those things that's stupid. That's stupid. It is. It's cool, but that's just dumb. Like, did he come out of the his own spell in full Wiccan prowess costume, and does he show up to save Agatha because he feels some sort of a kinship to Agatha because Agatha helped him figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to find Tommy? Enough so, and God, like dog, like who trusts Agatha, bro? My man showed up, chucked Rio like it was nobody's
Hey,
business.
listen, I wasn't expecting that.
I do love that, like in the battle, in the fight, like Agatha is going back and remembering things that she was told. And she's like hearing that, oh, when she calls you a coward, duck,
Duck.
right? And why is Lilia saving her of all people? You know what I mean? Like, and how did Lilia see that? Lilia wasn't there, right? Like, how does she even know that that's a thing? She's already gone. So, like, nonetheless, she threw a kitchen sink at her. It was very
The
interesting.
irony.
Um, yeah, and Billy says, "Don't take it all. Go ahead, go ahead, give you some juice." You know what I'm saying? Don't take it all. Um, and I guess, in the moment, maybe because she has gotten through the trial,
Mm-hmm.
she now has her power back in terms of being able to actually take and keep and use other people's powers because she hadn't been able to do that up to this point, right? Like when she
Mm-hmm.
got Alice's power, she walked out and tried to use it and couldn't use it.
Couldn't do it. The only thing I could think
Um,
of, at this point, now that obviously we know that Billy kind of constructed the whole entire thing, is that maybe when Alice actually, gave up her powers, maybe that really truly wasn't her powers per se, and maybe that was just a manifestation on what Billy was putting together, which gives us the explanation on why the powers either didn't sit or didn't remain. Um, that's one of the few things that I could think to make it make sense at that point, because even with her that little bit, because if you compare the amount that it seems like she took from Alice in comparison to what she took from Billy at the end of the thing, it just seemed like a way major difference. Or if that was just supposed to signify how strong, Billy actually is, and just kind of just doesn't know it per se. Um,
yeah, I mean, Billy's pretty strong, dog. Like Slim is gonna be like part of the thing going forward. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're just when Wanda shows up in the MCU, it's like, oh snap, we got the Scarlet Witch, and it's like as a comic book, like how powerful she is, but like she's so fluke technically when it starts. But by the time you get to WandaVision, it's like, nah, emotionally and age wise and whatever, like, nah, she been through it and she's managed to like really kind of get, again, she don't have control over it.
Mm-hmm.
Even at that point, the hex just happens, bro. Like she encaptures a whole town and all of those people and doesn't know how she does it. And Agatha's whole thing is she's there to find out how did you do it. Mind you, Agatha has the Darkhold. And we still don't know how Agatha ends up getting the Darkhold,
Mm-hmm.
right? 'Cause, like in this show, we theorize it feels like, it seems like, and the rumors are quote unquote that she traded her own son to get the Darkhold to get the Book of the Dead. But we clearly know now that's not what happened.
Nope.
So what happened? How did that happen? Right? There are still some very unanswered questions, and Billy don't know to ask those questions,
Right.
right? Death might know to ask those questions. It is in fact the Book of the Dead, and she is in fact Death. So you know,
She wrote the book on death.
I mean, I'm just saying. So they, it's probably something there. Um, or maybe that was how she managed to stave things off after the fact. Like maybe there was a point where she was supposed to die, and that's what Rio's talking about. That like
Mm-hmm.
there was something else that was supposed to have happened, and she got special treatment. Maybe she gave her access to it. Maybe she helped her figure it out or find it or learn some level of understanding of it. But she certainly didn't have the power of the Scarlet Witch, and that's what she was
Mm-hmm.
looking for. She wanted to understand. She was literally asking her how she did it, and Wanda's like, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
You know, I don't know.
I got mad. I had feelings and emotions.
Yeah, which is kind of the same thing with Billy, which is like why you can understand now, like now looking back on it and knowing that he was the one that constructed the entire thing. He basically pulled them all into a hex that was all contained within her basement. He don't know how he did it. He doesn't even know what powers are his and aren't. And when she walks up to him and is like, "You are so much like your mother," right? Because if anything, Agatha would want to know,
How
how do
you
you
do
have
that?
such power?
How you
How
do
did
that?
you do that? And she knows he really doesn't know. You know what I mean? And it is a lot like Wanda. Wanda was a kid, right? And her powers began to manifest themselves, and she started being able to do things that she couldn't even necessarily explain. But like keeping it a buck at, again, early on, the most she could do was like fling things at people. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like she could move objects or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
her ability is so underwhelming by comparison
Mm-hmm.
that like she's responsible for the whole Wakanda thing, right? In Civil War, she don't really have control over her powers, right? Like she's still a kid. She gets confined to the house. Like it can't really stop her. You know what I'm saying? Um, so he's kind of in the same place, but has a better understanding of who he is already because he had some level of control as a child
Mm-hmm.
and maybe did actually get some level of lessons from his mother about his abilities, and then he begins to do the research and really understand witches and what all that is. um Look, the defeat of what should have been Rio, them coming back and saying, them having the conversation, Agatha gets whooped, death by 1,000 cuts and some more, and then plays my man. It should be me. No, whatever. And then he's like, no, it should be me. And gives himself up. And again, I don't really understand why he did that. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Um, I don't quite get it.
I'm guessing maybe just because of him feeling, well, at that point, no, he hadn't figured out yet that he had manifested all of that. I would have say if it had been
Right.
after that, I would have been like, okay, he felt guilty for killing everybody or whatever. That scene probably like I feel like would have made a little more sense after the fact. That one
After the fact.
I will give you because it would have made him seem guilty and all that. But since we were before that, yeah, he didn't know any of that, so
Yeah, him kind of deciding like he would take Agatha's place and he would go, or whatever. Not especially now that like the thing you wanted, which was to find your brother, you now have the ability to do, or at least he's out there. Which again, maybe in some level is satisfactory. Like you at least know that you did save him, right? Because you
mhm,
could hear him, so he's out there. But again, what's the point? Your point would be to go find him. And so, like, if you're willing to just give that up and be dead and go with death in place of Agatha of all people, that just felt a little bit fluke to me. I didn't really like that, the way that happened, because again, he's just, I mean, dog, you showed up dressed as the guy. You're the guy now. You got power. You know what I mean? You floated from the sky with the electric blue lightning balls, and you know what I'm saying? You got the cape scarf joint and everything, and you just going, I'll go. I'll do it. It should be me. Like I don't know, dog. That joint was kind of fluke. Um, I kind of let it go in the moment because then
mhm.
Agatha just really shows her true, like,
True, yeah.
got
Take him.
him. I'm out. You know. Um, but then my man hit her with the curveball and hit her with the, oh, is this how Nicholas
Nicholas
died?
died. Mhm.
Ooh,
Burn,
Billy.
burn.
Ooh, Billy. You know, and even then, I don't know why that would have necessarily prompted Agatha to go back.
Right.
But I think it was about her actually kind of seeing her son in
Mhm.
Billy, knowing what she lost and how much she cared about him. Which again, at this point, we haven't seen that with her. We don't really know the story of her and Nicholas, which again makes me feel like the flashback might have served better before this happened, right? Because you don't have any idea of what that bond is between her and Nicholas and what she was willing to do for him. But when you think about the idea, again, when they're in her trial and the Ouija board spells out the name and Nicholas is there, and then you can hear him saying, "Stop it, don't do it," to Agatha. Now it makes more sense, right? That Nicholas was a much more pure soul and at least didn't seem like he had any magic abilities, but
Mhm.
certainly, just was like beginning to be her moral compass and starting to question her. Why do we
You gotta kill
why you
witches.
keep killing witches? What's going on, right? And she never tells him that the reason is because she's trying to keep him alive, right? That she's basically trading other souls to try to stave off death. And it doesn't seem like she and Rio are having any kind of conversation about this. She knows that Rio is collecting those bodies for sure
Mhm.
because they're dying, right? And that maybe that's enough, to stave it off. But the one time he pulls an okey doke, right? He starts to question, why are we doing it? Do we have to do it? Maybe we don't really need to do this kind of thing, And then she's like, all right. He's like, I promise we can kill more witches tomorrow. You know what I mean? And he's just kind of grown accustomed. As a kid, he might be like somewhere between 9 and 11. It seems like
Mhm.
they got, maybe between 8 and 10 or something like that. Like, so she did get some time with him. Um, but she also seemed to be enjoying getting that juice, getting that power, right? Enjoying how it felt to do it. And so it also seems to be that she was kind of also using Nicholas
Mm-hmm.
as a reason for her to keep feeding her own addiction to it, right? And um, having Billy question, is that what happened to Nicholas? Knowing that Nicholas was the only thing that kept her from doing what she was going to do in that, like, is what stopped her,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was doing in taking Alice's power and killing Alice, she was doing the exact same thing that he didn't want her to do anymore. Again, we didn't know that at this point, right? But him telling her to stop, now we know, like, she was killing all of these witches. And again, maybe he's aware at this point that that's the reason why. But it also does seem, and again, we have to jump around a little bit, that when Rio shows up to take Nicholas, um, she knows him. It seems like he knows her. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like she's like, "Come here," and then before she's like, "Wait, go back,
Go
give
back.
your mother
Give
a
my
kiss." It
kiss.
seems like maybe he knows what it is, or
Kind of
what.
what it is.
Maybe
Yeah.
he knows who she is in some manner, or he's familiar with her enough. Like, he doesn't seem scared at
He
all.
wasn't
He doesn't.
scared. Like that's one of those things. Like you just don't get up and go away with a stranger. So clearly there had been relationship, something with them already. And like you said, I don't know if he understood because like when he started before they him and Agatha went to sleep, he started coughing, and I was like, oh, so I was like, I didn't know if that was just maybe if it was cold out, but I think that was him maybe either getting sick and that was him. I'm saying almost like dying in his sleep, and that was her coming along and taking him away. I'm not sure, but definitely
I mean,
they.
certainly it appeared that he was getting sicker a bit
Hmm.
over time, and then during the day he was kind of getting a little sick. And when they, he goes in there and he sings the full version of the, like, the Witches Road joint, and then gets their attention. Little boy, where you at? Da da da, whatever. Shorty shows up, and then Mama shows up, and he's like, nah, I'm good. Maybe another time, and just dips.
Hmm.
She goes out and can't find him. He made a decision. Like, that's just enough. Why are we just killing these people, right? These are people who are trying to help us. They're trying to help me. These are people who are kind and have a good heart and are whatever. And like, we're killing them, and he doesn't feel right about it. And so he doesn't want her to keep doing it. And so he's like, nah, we're not doing it. Right. And I think that he begins to get that part of what it is. She doesn't really ever explain it to him, but I think he starts to understand that the reason why it's happening is it has to do with him.
Hmm.
Like, he knows he's sick. He knows he's not well, and that what she's doing in some manner is doing that. But I also think that the downside of what she's doing in Agatha is very selfish, in that she is doing a thing that is keeping Nikki alive. However, Nikki is suffering. He's sick. He doesn't feel well. He's coughing. They're constantly on the road. They're sleeping outside. They don't have a home. There are all of these things that, like, Agatha is doing, and like her stopping and telling him, like, you better get used to this,
Hmm.
right? Is a thing that she also said to Billy at one point, like, you better get used to it. Saying like, you better get used to this. It's like, but is that really the way you want? Like, yes, you're getting more time with him. You're getting to spend time with him. You love him. He loves you. But like, what is he going through, right?
Hmm.
How does he feel? What kind of pain is he in? Nothing you're doing is actually healing him, so to speak. It is keeping him alive, though, right? And he's suffering. And so, to some extent, what she was doing was very selfish and was inhumane towards Nikki, right? And he
Hmm.
kind of seemed to make a decision, in my opinion, for himself that, I gotta, like, I don't want you to keep doing this, and I don't want to keep being part of it. But I do love you though, so we'll kill some more witches
Hmm.
tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can kill some more joints tomorrow. Um, look, and Agatha makes the call to go back and just kiss of death, right? With Rio. I don't know if that's the only way she could take her power, but now that
Right.
she has the power to take power, they kind of already talked about it. She had said to her in the beginning, "Why don't you take my power?" She's like, I can't do that because it would kill me. So she makes that move. I think she gets that power for a split second, and then of course it kills her. Right? You can't be death. Death already exists. And her death and coming back and refertilizing the soil is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Um, and then Billy moves on. Right? And so does Rio. She gets what she needs. I guess she gets a body, but she still needs Tommy. That's where I'm at in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy goes home, and his folks have a moment, and you've been gone for 24 hours, but they're happy to see him. And then when we open the next episode, my man's walking in his room, and the same things that we were talking about, the stuff that's in his room was stuff
Mm-hmm.
that was in every one of those trials, right? And he's starting to piece it together. He's beginning to realize it. She walks in and gives him the boo. You don't really know what that is at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's all starting to kind of come together. And so, we open the second episode, and we see, her pregnant, down a windy road, or whatever. And realistically, watching her take the lives of these witches to stave off Nikki's death, and then him eventually dying and Rio taking him, and then her kind of snapping and becoming the Agatha that the stories are about,
Mm-hmm.
that the stories are really about, right? And I guess she had some of that before then, but she's been that's that moment of her doing exactly what she did to them in the house, and you're seeing her take these witches, form a coven, sing the song, and then just be like, you guys must be the worst witches ever, you're trash, blah blah blah, and getting them to use their powers on her, and her just sucking up life, which means of course that you know death has been able to continue to collect bodies the whole time, but Agatha was either kept very powerful and or kept alive by continuing to do that throughout the centuries, right? And you begin to see those very exact same tropes,
Mm-hmm.
and Lilia call her out on it, right? And here's the interesting thing to me: I can't figure out why she would tell Lilia that she can't take their power unless they use it on her. I don't understand if the whole purpose of her doing what she did and taking them all down there was so that she could trick them into using their powers on her. Why would she tell Lilia that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Also, none of them had powers they could use on her
Mm-hmm.
except for like Lilia, right? Like that's it. And so the one person like Jen is bound, can't use any magic. She wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. Mrs. Hart has no power, right? Alice also doesn't really have, like, I guess maybe we never saw her use any
Right.
power until the end of her trial, Agatha's trial. Like we never saw her fight, you know. And so like it seemed to me that none of them would have been able to use their powers on Agatha to
Anyway,
begin with, except for Lilia.
it's weird.
So
Like, I don't know if this was just maybe because Billy obviously seen them all at different points in his mind. I don't know if that was just his mind needing people to be a part of this. So when that list was created with their names on it, maybe this was just names that he's seen, like Alice when she had like her badge on that had her name on it. He's seen um Jennifer on like YouTube, so I know her name was on there. It was like names that he's visually seen, and so he can be like, oh, mentally, I just grabbed these couple names and just threw them up here. The text,
well,
like you
again,
said.
those were all names and things that came across him before the body swap kind
Hmm.
of thing, right? Those were William
Seeing right.
things. right? And not necessarily Billy things. So they could have been manifested in some way. But again, Lily is the one who did it and wrote them down. Maybe he was exercising some level of power at that point as well. But also, it's strange to me. It seems to me that it was a setup for her to be able to steal Billy's power.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I think that her, because she told Bill, I would think she would want Billy down there to try to do something too. But she told Billy he couldn't come down there. You stay upstairs. We're going to go down here and do this. Her attempt to steal their power, I think, would have been she gets their power and then he comes down like, what's going on? Or she's able to go up. Now she's got power again
Mm-hmm.
and she's able to steal his, or something like that. And that was maybe what the point of it was at that point. But then we begin to realize that no, she she had no idea that the role was going to show up, and then realizes this is all Billy's doing. And as it turns out that Billy's the one who did it, you really do begin to realize how powerful he is in his own mind. That it's all a thing that he made up because the role wasn't there. And in his realization that, like, bro, that means I killed all these people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, I will say this: I like the idea of Agatha in ghost form. That is how she spends a lot of her time in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually, more as a guide to Wanda, but having her kind of do the swap for
Switching
the
them dual
MCU and
Billy.
be a guide to Billy could be really cool. I do like the idea that it means we do get more Agatha. It does mean that
Mm-hmm.
she's more important than just what this show is. So again, in the beginning for me, what is the point of this show and where are we really going? Okay, we officially got
I'm good with
Wiccan. We have Ghost form of Agatha. We know that Tommy is out there. I think at this point, the Young Avengers is complete in terms of like everybody's here that's
it. Mm-hmm.
supposed to be here, right? Um, so I feel satisfied in that. I do think those two episodes could have been swapped out or some things maybe rearranged to do it. Um, but them being ready to just kind of walk out, like, all right, let's go find Tommy. Like that's now I'm just like, all right, what are we doing?
What are we doing? Well, how long are we gonna have to wait for them to start the journey of finding Tommy?
Yeah, yeah. Overall, bro, I still think I'm at an 8 for the show. Um, I think that that lull kind of in the beginning and like the middling episodes went away real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by the next episode, and then it kind of just stays, and it doesn't really drop off again until the final episode. But the final episode does so much in terms of filling in the gaps
Mm-hmm.
and explaining things that even though it's not as exciting, it's still very satisfactory
Mm-hmm.
because it's giving you all of those pieces that you really need. And again, there's still some questions, which there always should be.
Should be.
Um, so I think overall I'm at an 8. What about you?
I'm at a 9. I think
Okay.
like even with the little pieces towards the end, I think everything about this show has been well executed. Like you said, things started a little bit of a lull, but then gears shifted and like we were just off to the races. Like,
Hmm.
and then maybe because at one point it was just like, I feel like we're just watching this because it's MCU involved with it, and then it's not going to play into the bigger things. But as we start going through, I'm like, oh, there's things moving around in this. Um, I enjoyed all the characters. I don't think necessarily anyone was less than the other, especially when it came time for the trials and giving everyone, each person, their like forefront on what it was they needed to do. Maybe other than Miss Davis, that's probably the only one that unfortunately because she didn't
Yeah.
belong, so she really didn't necessarily get to do anything. But her little comedy in the between, I thought was pretty solid on there for it. Um, I think this
Yeah, I
this
mean, I'd say the one error, right, is she didn't. One, I don't know how she would have had a trial because she certainly wasn't a Green Witch, and two, there was no like real Green Witch trial. I don't think like there was like I don't
right.
know what was Rio's trial like that didn't really exist. So like what I don't but whatever.
Whatever. But otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed this from top to bottom. I'm eager to see how long it takes us to get to find out what we're gonna do about finding Tommy, and then same thing where this is gonna end up fitting in, especially with Ghost Agatha being involved. Like I feel like she's gonna be a linchpin. Someone within the MCU is going to end up knowing about her, and she's going to be a piece to have to, even if it's just getting a group of characters to a certain world or a certain understanding of something. I feel like she's going to be a piece, especially living for so long. I feel like there's going to be reference to something maybe ages ago that only someone that has been alive for some period of time is going to be able to know. But I'm at a 9. I think Agatha alone was overall a solid, probably one of the better of the MCU shows that we have had. Um, I enjoyed it.
I dig it. Well, listen, that wraps up your spoiler boys for Agatha All Along the show. This has been our discussion on episodes 8 and 9, but as a whole for the show, we are at an 8 and a 9. Imagine that. Um, I appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Look, maybe somewhere down the road, we might have to like. We're gonna end up having to have a discussion about Penguin. So y'all keep your eyes open for that because, good God. We'll see y'all on the next one. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We're out. Toodles and loos.
Loading snacks.